Some stories start with a mistake. This one started with arrogance. One hot afternoon in a small Georgia town, a deputy saw a black couple driving a nice SUV and decided right there in his own head that they must be criminals. 20 minutes later, he was pointing a gun at them. 40 minutes later, he learned they were federal agents. And yeah, the rest of his life pretty much fell apart after that. Now I'll tell you the truth about how it happened, because the headlines never quite capture the feeling of being there in the moment, the heat, the tension, the way a man's pride can ruin everything before his brain even gets involved. The deputy's name was Cole Mercer, and around Red Hollow he carried himself like he owned every inch of pavement. You know the type, sunglasses even when it's cloudy. Voice always loud enough to remind people who's in charge, the kind of guy who thinks a badge is permission to bully whoever happens to cross his path. People in town had stories about him. Little things, mostly traffic stops, that somehow turned into lectures, tickets that appeared out of nowhere, warnings that sounded more like threats. But small towns are funny like that. Folks talk, they roll their eyes, then they go back to minding their own business because nobody wants trouble with the local deputy. That afternoon, Cole was sitting in his cruiser near the edge of town, parked beside an old bait shop sign that had been fading in the sun for about 20 years. It was one of those sticky southern days where the air feels like soup, and even the road looks tired. He had the window-cracked, cheap gas station coffee in the cup holder, just watching cars roll through like he did most afternoons. And then he saw it. A brand new Escalade white paint shining like it had its own spotlight. Nice car. Real nice. Too nice in Cole's mind for the couple sitting inside. He leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. Black man driving calm posture, one hand on the wheel. Black woman beside him looking down at her phone. That was all it took. No speeding, no swerving, no broken taillight, just a story Cole invented inside his own head. He flipped on the lights and pulled out behind them. "Let's see what we've got here," he muttered like he already knew the ending. The SUV slowed down and pulled over near a little country church with a crooked wooden cross leaning over the gravel lot. No hesitation, no panic, just a smooth stop like the driver had done it 100 times before. That should have been the first clue something was different. But Cole wasn't looking for clues, he was looking for confirmation. He stepped out of the cruiser, adjusted his belt, let his hand rest near his holster in that casual way some officers do when they want you to notice it. Then he walked up to the passenger window and knocked hard. The glass rolled down and cold air spilled out of the vehicle. Inside sat a woman in a neat blazer, hair tied back, eyes steady behind dark sunglasses. She looked at him with the kind of calm expression that usually belongs to someone who isn't afraid of authority. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. Her voice wasn't shaky or defensive, just direct. Cole didn't like that tone one bit. "License and registration," he said. "Now." The driver turned slightly. A tall man with broad shoulders and a voice that carried a quiet kind of confidence. "Did we do something wrong?" he asked. Cole leaned closer to the window. "You got tinted glass, maybe crossed the line back there, maybe obstructed view." The driver glanced at the mirror, then back at him. "We didn't cross anything." Cole's jaw tightened. "Boy, I didn't ask for your opinion." The word hung in the air for a moment. The woman's expression hardened just a little. The driver stayed calm, reaching slowly toward the center console. "Hands," Cole shouted, jumping back like he'd just seen a snake. "Hands where I can see them." "You asked for my wallet," the driver said evenly. But by that point, Cole had already decided the situation needed to escalate. "Both of you out of the vehicle," he barked. "Now!" The couple exchanged a quick glance, one of those silent conversations people have when they know something ridiculous is about to unfold. Then they stepped out slow and careful. Cole spread the driver against the hood of the SUV and started patting him down harder than necessary, pushing his legs apart with his boot. "Name," he demanded. "Adrian Cross." "You under arrest?" Adrian asked calmly. "You're being detained," Cole snapped. Then he turned to the woman. "Your turn." "I do not consent to a search," she said clearly. Cole laughed under his breath. "That's not really your call right now." He grabbed her arm and turned her around anyway. She stiffened but didn't struggle. Instead, she said something that would echo later like a warning he ignored. "You are making a serious mistake." Cole waved that off and started searching the SUV. He opened the console, dug through the glove box, checked under the seats like he was starring in his own crime show. Then he found it. A pistol secured near the driver's seat. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Gun," he shouted, backing out and drawing his own weapon. On the ground. "Both of you." Adrian turned slowly, eyes locked on Cole's hands. "That firearm is legal," he said quietly. "Check the identification before you make this worse." Backup arrived fast, gravel spraying as two more deputies pulled up. The tension in the air felt like a stretched rubber band. Within seconds, Adrian and the woman were in handcuffs. One of the younger deputies looked unsure. "Cole, you want to check their IDs first?" "Fake," Cole said. "You can smell fake a mile away." He grabbed Adrian's wallet and flipped it open, and that's when the ground shifted under his feet. The badge inside wasn't cheap or flashy like something from a novelty store. It was solid, engraved, official. Federal. The ID beside it read, "Special Agent Adrian Cross." Cole blinked. Then he looked again, like the words might rearrange themselves if he stared hard enough. "What is it?" one of the deputies asked. Cole snapped the wallet shut. "Counterfeit," he said quickly, even though the doubt had already crept into his voice. Adrian watched him with that same calm expression. "You still have time to stop this," he said quietly. "Take the cuffs off and walk away. But pride can be louder than common sense." "Take them in," Cole ordered. The ride to the station was silent except for the hum of the tires on asphalt. In the back seat, Adrian leaned forward slightly and spoke through the divider. "You understand what happens next, right?" The deputy driving glanced nervously in the mirror but didn't answer. At the station, Cole tried to control the narrative. He told the desk sergeant they had detained suspects with fake federal credentials. He spoke loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Elena, that was the woman's name, Elena Cross, stood there in cuffs and said calmly, "You are now committing a federal civil rights violation." Cole leaned closer. "You're committing a mistake talking back." A few minutes later, the police chief walked in, an older man named Russ Bannon, who had been around long enough to recognize trouble when it walked through the door. He picked up the badge from the desk and studied it. "Did you verify this?" he asked. "Didn't need to," Cole replied. "Fake." The chief looked at Adrian, then at Elena. "Who are you?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "We're the reason your department is about to be investigated," Elena added quietly. "We're part of a federal task force looking into corruption tied to this town." You could feel the air shift in the room. The chief's expression tightened. Cole's face flushed red. "They're bluffing," he insisted. Adrian shook his head slowly. "Deputy, you saw a black man in a nice truck and wrote your own story about it. That's the only reason we're standing here." Cole's hand moved to his taser. For a moment it looked like things might go from bad to catastrophic. Then the chief spoke up, voice low but firm. "Take the cuffs off." Cole stared at him like he'd been betrayed. "Chief, that wasn't a request." Adrian rubbed his wrists once the cuffs were removed. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Just a few quiet words. Compromise confirmed. "Bring the team." 12 minutes later, the entire station erupted with sirens, helicopters, and the unmistakable presence of federal agents flooding through the doors. Cameras showed up too, media trucks lining the street outside like vultures sensing a story. Agents moved straight toward Cole. Elena pointed calmly. "That's him." Within seconds, his hands were zip-tied behind his back and he was slammed against the wall. "You're under arrest," one of the agents said. Cole shouted that he was just doing his job. Adrian stepped closer and spoke quietly. "No, you abused your job." The investigation that followed uncovered a mess bigger than anyone expected. Records of questionable traffic stops, complaints buried in paperwork, shady deals involving local officials. Cole wasn't the architect of the system, but he had been a loyal part of it. At trial, the evidence spoke for itself. Dashcam footage showed the traffic stop from start to finish, every word, every escalation. Witnesses testified about patterns of harassment and intimidation. Even some of Cole's former co-workers admitted they had seen his behavior before. The judge called it a betrayal of public trust. The sentence was 22 years in federal prison. Just like that, the man who once strutted around Red Hollow like a king of the road became inmate number something nobody bothered remembering. Adrian and Elena didn't celebrate publicly. They went back to work because people in their line of business know corruption doesn't disappear after one arrest. It just hides somewhere else until someone drags it back into the light. And maybe that's the part that sticks with me the most. Because Adrian and Elena had training connections, a federal task force ready to move when they called. But think about the average person in that situation. Someone without a badge in their wallet or a team waiting to back them up. What happens to them when someone like Cole decides to play judge and jury on the side of the road? Yeah, that question stays with you. so I want to hear from you. Do you think this was justice finally working the way it should, or was it just karma catching up to someone who pushed his luck too far? And if Adrian and Elena had been ordinary citizens instead of federal agents, do you think anyone would have been held accountable at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me what you think, because stories like this aren't just about one deputy or one traffic stop. They're about power bias and the thin line between authority and abuse. If you've ever witnessed something like this yourself, share it. And if you believe nobody should be above the law, especially the people enforcing it, make sure you stick around for the next story, because sometimes the truth only comes out when somebody refuses to stay silent.